And we are live with our 45th episode of Absolute AppSec. I'm Ken Johnson at CK Tricky on Twitter, joined by my co-host Seth Law at Seth Law on Twitter. Seth, say hi.
Hey everybody! Excuse the voice today. I've been a little bit under the weather, but we're going to try and make it work today. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. We got Sean with us, and yeah, I'm excited. As usual, I'm a little loopy too, so it should be fun.
Yeah, and if you don't know Sean is the product security and assurance. He leads product security and assurance at Verizon Media, which, Sean, this is kind of weird. It was Verizon Media. Before that, it was Oath, and then it was AOL. So you've seen a lot of change, basically, in a short period of time. Just a few years, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been almost 3 years here. I think I had just about a little over a year as AOL. Then we smushed AOL and Yahoo together, along with VDMS and a couple other properties. And boom, now we're Oath, and then we were Oath for about a year and a half, and now we're getting used to calling ourselves Verizon Media. So it's the dawn of a new day. Who knows what next year will offer us?
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Don't invest too much in company swag, or do, I don't know.
That's right.
So before you were at Verizon, you worked as the director of software security at College Board, and we're going to obviously get back. We're going to get into your background quite a bit more throughout this episode. In fact, that's the whole point. We want to get to know you, and I know you've worked at IBM as well. And I think that, from my personal take, like having known you, one of the things I definitely hope that we get to hear a little bit about is sort of your leadership style, where it's inspired from, and we'll get to that later. But I think that of all the things you've done, a lot of it has focused on leadership and corralling various efforts and groups together. So I'm happy to have you on the episode. I know Seth is as well. So thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. Looking forward to it.
Seth, do you want to kick off the AppSec Minute?
Sure. This week's AppSec Minute is inspired by Sean actually coming on board. Sean's done a lot with kind of bug bounty programs over there at Verizon Media /Oath/AOL/ whatever you want to call it tomorrow. But one of the things that we've been discussing quite often is how to maximize your value coming out of the bug bounty program, right? You got a whole bunch of researchers that are typically pretty dedicated and pretty good at finding their specific niches. And there's methodologies that exist that are out there, and you've got a team internally that can actually find a lot of the low-hanging fruit and keep that from entering into the bug bounty payouts, I guess, right? Sean, what have your strategies been in like minimizing that those low-hanging fruit or those low-hanging vulnerabilities?
Yeah, the way I look at it, right, is if you're paying out for a bounty, you want to figure out how to derive the most out of every dollar that you're spending. So you buy the vulnerability, but that's just the first step. The next step is then to say, what did the researcher do that was unique, that got them that vulnerability? And then do something that I'm dubbing the bug bounty lifecycle, which is feeding that information back into the product security and dev side of the house to make sure that there's a broad-based evaluation of how did that get into production environment, and then how do you route that out with tools and processes into the pipeline, right? So how can we take some of the techniques that we know are out there and embed those into our pre-production activities and ensure that we don't see that type of vulnerability again. And so that's a kind of a continual feedback loop.
Yeah, I mean, that's always kind of a hard, I don't know, as a consultant, right, coming in, is that's the ideal that you want to see. Like, if I find a bug, I want you to take that and actually you learn from it as an organization, right? And as a researcher, I would expect that as well. There's some really good resources that are out there if an organization is struggling with this, right? If they're paying out a lot of server banners or whatever, right? Low-hanging fruit.
Right.
One of the biggest is Jason Haddock's, right? He's got his bug hunters methodology, I think is what he calls it. That is actually a YouTube video you can go and watch. And he talks about all the different tools that the bug hunters or the bug bounty researchers use in enumerating hosts, enumerating directories, like the stuff that they run on a daily basis to find those vulnerabilities. And if you can get ahead of that, and I know there's a couple services that are out there that'll do something similar, but if you can get ahead of that, that's an easy way to actually maximize that value and make sure that they're concentrating on what you would consider to be higher critical risk vulnerabilities instead of the low-hanging fruit. I think you mentioned something else as we were talking before the episode, though. I mean, I mentioned the bug bounty or the bug hunters methodology from Jason. Is there anything else that you've identified?
Yeah, there are a couple tools. We were looking just recently at Asset Note, and there's Jacket and Burp, and and each researcher has their own unique tool, right? So some of them they've even pulled open source. There's small cheap products. There's products they use in a very specific way. So you can follow guys like and each researcher a lot of times has their specific go-to, right? Like Mark Litchfield, who's a part of our bug bounty program now. He went from being a researcher to joining the program. One of his sweet spots is IDOR, right?
Okay.
So so if you can build a relationship with the researchers, and I think on one of the past Absolute AppSecs, I heard you guys talking about how you build those relationships and how that derives value for your program. That's exactly it, right? So we say, hey, you're going to make us better, and we're going to make you better, right? We're going to keep evolving our product security capabilities. We're going to keep adding more tools to the toolkit, dropping that into the pipeline, finding more of those low-hanging fruit, and forcing you to get better at how you find bugs. And if you get better on our platform, you're going to get better on Ken's GitHub platform and other folks' platform. And now we're going to start just making the broad-based community better. So that's the philosophy. We'll see if the bug hunters buy into the philosophy. I think they will.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of them, there's a lot of pride that's involved in that community and finding really juicy bugs and interesting bugs, and just running some kind of scanning tool and finding something that you may not have had time to find or slip through the cracks. That's not as sexy in the community.
No, I mean, I know from like, even from a consulting perspective, as I go in and I'm doing a, pen test of some application or whatever, right? People ask, they'll be like, oh, well, how did you find that bug? And I'm like, well, actually I ran burp scanner against it and it identified SQL injection, right? Like that's how easy it was.
Right.
I'm like, yeah, like we can talk through it, but it didn't take actually a lot to do. So it's not like something that I'm going to like hold up as, hey, I'm going to do a Medium post about this or whatever. But most of those Medium posts that I end up reading from the bounty researchers, there's like 3 or 4 vulnerabilities that they chain together, and it's super interesting, right? But it usually starts with that low-hanging fruit, and that's what most of the organizations need to realize. If you're not scanning your own external network with something like Burp or NetSpark or one of the other dynamic scanners just to figure out what's there, you're leaving money on the table for those bounty hunters to find, right?
Yeah, and there's an article, it's like a SANS article from Jason Poobal, I think, it was sort of it's a 25-page how-to on standing up a bug bounty program, and the classic flavor is you pick a product, then you do your product security function. So you do all your source scanning, you do all the low-hanging fruit, get rid of that. You start on a really small private program, and then you launch it. So by the time you get to the public program, in theory, you have eradicated a lot of the low-hanging fruit. But then software changes, and you keep pumping product out, and new things show up, right? So
along those lines, right? And Ken, if I'm just going too fast, just let me know, right? Like I said,
no,
I'm
not
a
at
little
all.
like loopy, so I'm just running down paths.
No, I was actually looking at Mark Litchfield. I was kind of looking at his, which I didn't realize until. Well, congratulations on the pickup, by the way, on Mark Litchfield. But I didn't realize he and David Litchfield were brothers. I had no idea. Like, for whatever reason, that was something I didn't know. So now I learned.
Yeah, Mark keeps telling me he's the better brother. I don't know. I'm just kidding.
Smarter, better looking, more charismatic, all around, just much better brother.
Sweet.
Dave, I don't know you. I'm just kidding, man.
No, I was going to ask. I mean, obviously, like, the number of properties that are in scope, right, for your bug bounty program, that pathway makes sense. But there's a lot that's in there. I mean, there's a lot of subdomains. There's a lot that you may or may not know about, just given the pace of development at a modern, very flexible, very tech-heavy organization. Like, what are your strategies for keeping on top of that?
Yeah, that's an incredible challenge in this size organizations. And in fact, there's sometimes I lament and I say, man, wouldn't it be awesome to be at, a startup with a single tech stack and we could start security from scratch, right? But then obviously you're scrapping for dollars and that you're a security team of one. But yeah, no, our big challenge is, all the different brands, all the different tech stacks. There's a lot of great tooling that came from each of these companies. Like when I first joined AOL, I was really impressed by the technical acumen that we had here and the history and discipline. And when we saw what Yahoo had, they had some great stuff as well. And so now combining that all together, there are a lot of tools that we can leverage. But now you got to connect all of that together. And what we're trying to do is do this full pathway from discovering the properties to performing product security services to providing bug bounty services, yanking that data back out and providing an executive dashboard that shows the quality of those services across the entire portfolio, and then how are we doing within each slice of the portfolio at a quick visual, and then we can dive in and sort of ramp different products up and incorporate different services as they come on board.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge problem, right? Like, and it's not necessarily a problem that we've talked about on the podcast in the past. This is part of the reason I'm excited to have you on. I mean, a lot of the times, most of our guests that we've had up to this point haven't necessarily been in the, running a huge program or management role. It's been more of, hey, they're day-to-day, they're boots on the ground, they're finding SSRF or they're building tools around that. So it's interesting to get that aspect of, all right, holistically, what does an application security program look like? Probably, I can't remember how long ago, we had Justin Larson on, and he's trying to build an AppSec program at one of those startups like you're talking about, but it's him. He's the only guy. He's trying to develop these relationships with developers, find tooling, find resources, and the problems that he runs into are vastly different than what you're seeing, at least at the level that you are. I mean, like, I know the guys at Oath, or I know the guys at Verizon Media that are extremely technical, especially on the development side, that if you can't hang with them, I'm sure that's an issue, right? Being able to speak to their level when they're running what, Edgecast or whatever it is that's on that front. So I can see how fostering the relationships with bug bounty researchers is extremely important, but also like managing the program as a whole becomes a different level, or goes to a different level. If that makes any sense.
No, it really does, and it still strikes me as just fascinating how some of the same techniques that we talked about, 8 years ago in AppSec still apply, and it still apply whether you're building a small program or a big program, right? It's most people, how many AppSec managers or folks leading pen test programs say, I got plenty of people, I'm good. Like, don't give me anybody else, and I'm all set. So what do you have to do? What are the strategies that you have to use? One of them we always talk about, right, is the satellites, champions, that kind of thing, right? But this is really crucial because you have these, now the fun part of AppSec is that the onus is now on us. It used to be developers really didn't know. I mean, they hadn't heard of cross-site scripting, or and you're ramping them up on, oh, here's what this can do, or click jacking or whatever. Now they know about it. Now they're security aware for the most part, and they come to you and they say, give me solutions that meet my pace of play, that fit into my pipeline at scale. And a lot of AppSec programs go, oh, I've got this heavyweight tool, or I've got this tool I can customize, but it's going to throw a million false positives you're going to ignore anyway. So now the developers are turning back on AppSec programs, which I think is awesome, and saying, you guys come back when you have tools and processes that can play with us at scale. So I think that's fun. I think now we've got champions out there who are really technically capable on the security side. I think there was a lot of sort of back and forth between AppSec folks and developers, and saying developers didn't, you don't know how to build secure code. You guys don't know what you're doing. Now a lot of them do. And we have to catch up to advancing the conversation. If you show up to a developer with an old school SaaS scanner that takes 4 hours to run, no way. right?
Yeah.
So, I think that's really fun now. And we have so many ways to build bite-sized pieces of AppSec into what developers are doing. If we can do that in a smart way and engage those champions to help do that, they'll be willing to, especially on the back end, right? If you have to sit there, you get a bug bounty finding and you got to go fix it, or, Seth as a consultant comes through and finds 4 vulnerabilities, and now you got to go back and fix it. That's so much more of a pain than if you're just kind of finding sprint after sprint and dealing with it at your own pace. So that's the direction that, that's the sort of the holy grail, is standing up that great satellite champion program. Yahoo had a great program like that. And, now that we're moving into Verizon Media, actually, we're leveraging, there's some great stuff that's happening over at Verizon with Mana Khalil. And they have a really nice program there. So, I think there's some good opportunities to build that out. It's one of the things I really want to do in 2019 to make sure that we can federate AppSec, because I'll never have enough people.
Yeah.
When you said, oh, sorry, Seth.
Go ahead. If you got questions, go for it.
Yeah, no, because I was going back. You had mentioned things we can do or bite-sized things we can do to integrate AppSec into like developers' daily work. And I was just wondering, like, what are some examples of stuff that you see that works in that?
Well, I've got some things that work and some things that are hypotheses right now.
That's always the way it's going to be. There's always going to be things in progress.
One of the things that I really like is, we've got some automation where we pump any findings that we have directly into the developer's change management process, which is great. But then, then you say, okay, wait 3 months until you have an instructor-led training. So this whole notion of getting just-in-time, bite-sized information to the developers at the right time. So the one thing that we're collaborating on within the Paranoids is, dynamically go out, gen the defect, and then drop in a 2-minute video somebody can watch along with a class, but something that's just enough that a developer will stop and spend time on it, versus making it this big heavyweight. Here's the curriculum for all OWASP top 10 training one at a time over the course of the year, right? So, that's one of those things. Or, hey, let's eradicate a vulnerability class from our code base, and we'll start sprint over sprint over sprint. And we'll start with a certain, finite number that you can kind of chew on, and we'll enable you with some tools, or maybe, a custom rule this sprint, or, here's a bite-sized nugget, right? And this came from, or was reinforced, but was an AppSec, AppSec USA in San Jose last year. And I think Avi from the Israeli chapter was talking about the sort of threat modeling within the sprint. So, you don't have to do, and there's challenges with that, right? But, you're going to drop a certain feature. Let's take a look at that feature in micro for this sprint, rather than try to do all the heavyweight work, and you're just never going to keep up, right? So keeping those different strategies and techniques, and they have to all be kind of combined in different ways to have the full value. But those are some of the things that I think we just need to continue to get to across the AppSec spectrum.
I've heard of the idea of, I think it was, you know what, it might have been Breakman Pro and Secure Code Warrior, where if a finding, if it finds something, the reference, I think the reference points to secure, like a tutorial or some training you can watch on Secure Code Warrior that's similar, but I'm not sure if it's Breakman Pro. It might be. But yeah, I like the idea of it.
Yeah. I mean, I just linked to Stack Overflow. That's usually cool, right?
Well, hey, that's where you got the issue. So
yeah.
Fix from there.
I mean, that's a great idea to build out a library of, hey, guess what? We really only need a 2-minute, like, short video on cross-site scripting. This is what it is. This is how to prevent it. I'd be interested to see. I mean, I know you could link to like YouTube stuff, but I don't know if there's actually curated content that's out there for that, right? I don't think I've necessarily seen it. I mean, I know we can go to Secure Code Warrior or somebody like that, but it would be interesting to see if there is some snippets that we can actually call to. I mean, OWASP has their cheat sheets, but you have to go and read through that, or you have to go and figure out the descriptions. If they're not reading the description that's in the vulnerability as it is, how do you actually make that more palatable to the developer to actually go view that content?
Yeah. And I've been asking the training vendors for years to come up with that piece. I said, hey, that would be compelling. That would you'd have developers, the click rate and the ingestion rate would be so much higher than the typical, just kind of fat curriculum. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the vendors, and this has shifted lately. Actually, there are a couple of vendors that I think are going to be able to service this now, or at least pretty soon. But the way it used to be is just about training is compliance, right? You got to check the box. And so here's the curriculum and all the things you can show a PCI auditor to say, don't we have a great curriculum? And we've put our developers through this training. And by the way, the OWASP top 10 training that you're going to get year after year after year, and the same developers say, well, wait a minute, do I really need to attend it again this year? So that's one extreme. And then this other extreme is this sort of just-in-time bite-sized training. So yeah, I'm hoping more vendors head down that path.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I've seen, well, especially with the advent of the secure code warrior, like the online training platform where you're actually having to go in and at least identify vulnerable code and fix vulnerable code. I've seen a couple different vendors that are playing in that space. It's really interesting to me, right? There's the other one, Ken, that we were talking about recently was like the Hunter 2 platform as well. Which, they spin up Docker instances and, everything behind the scenes. So people have to go fix things, and it works pretty well. But I'd be interested to see like somebody actually come out and do that, like a spectrum, not necessarily this instructor-led course. Seems to be that's where most of them are coming from. But exactly what you're saying. Hey, guess what? We've got a 5-minute segment on just XSS, and you can just license all you can eat. Your developers can do whatever as long as that's coming in from your IP space or whatever it is. But yeah, I'd be interested to actually follow up with some of those guys. So as you identify some of those, kick those over, and we'll post about them, because that's definitely a space that I think a lot of people would be interested in.
Yeah, we'll do. Our proactive engagement team has been doing a lot of research and good work on that front. So I'll keep you guys posted.
Cool. Sweet. So that was AppSec Minute. It only took us 26 minutes this time. So I'm slimming down. Anyway, there's a lot of resources that are out there. Ken, did you post any of those? I didn't actually follow.
I don't think I did, but I will.
Or we can. Yeah. Let's talk with Sean. Let's get his background a little bit. If you've got it in front of you, yeah, let's go there. Actually, Sean, how did you get into application security? Right? Ken mentioned IBM. I know you've been kind of a project manager at some point. So, what was your path? What did you do in school? Like, how did you end up where you're at?
Yeah, it's a strange tale, right? So I started out as a bio major, so I wasn't comp sci kind of guy, and I did some work at Department of Energy, and then in a genetic toxicology lab. And my claim to fame there before I got out of the lab running and screaming was a publication as a Grisio-Fulvin induced chromosomal aberrations in Syrian hamster embryo cells.
I know. I was reading that, and I'm like, "What does this even mean?" On your,
it was amazing.
Wow.
With
now,
that really,
now I know how my wife feels when I start talking cross-site scripting and
right.
I understood the Syrian hamster embryo cells now that I can wrap my head around there being Syrian hamsters.
I know, right?
I don't know why that would be a weird thing, but
it's a thing. But really, that meant I sat in a lab dressed in a lab coat, gloves, and a respirator for 8 hours a day, every day by myself, listening to music, working on, research and trials, that kind of thing. And then I said, wow, this is not fun. So one of the things I picked up in the lab was just taking care of some of the desktops, doing some of the data crunching, right? So I started getting to IT. I said, let me get out of bio. I knew somebody who was in the lab there at the who was in IT at the lab, and she offered me, a job. And then I talked to somebody else, and they said, hey, we're looking for people. We'll train you up. And so I got into software development and systems integration. And then I headed over to IBM, and I sort of switched over into troubled projects, project management, where they would fly me, pretty much up and down the East Coast just to deal with gnarly projects and get them back on track. And then I said, got into cyber, started reading more about it, thought it was really interesting. Oh, I use the word cyber. Oh, that's bad. Got into security. And
man, now I have to mark.
We won't give you a hard time.
That's it. Right. Sean, thanks for coming by. So, security looked really interesting. And then I had this great opportunity at College Board to become an information security program manager. One of the first programs I spun up was their application security program. Because of my software development background, I was a good fit. We had Cigital in there at the time, and we built out the application security program. We had an amazing executive sponsor on the software engineering side. Big shout out to Brandon Jackson, who was a great supporter of the program and really got it. So we were able to have some great success there, build that program out. Did some more information security work, got involved in incident response policy, just a bunch of different things. And then opportunity showed up at AOL, and AOL, Oath, Verizon Media, here we are.
Yeah. A lot of changes in a few years, but
that's not a typical, like, definitely most of the guys that we talk to, it's more technical on the, I guess biology works, right? Everybody has a different path, and risk profiles, right? It's all about risk profiles, and everything's the same at some level.
Viruses, I mean, come on, right?
See, it all makes more sense now, Sean. I can see how it works for you.
But I was really
defaced websites definitely as bad as Ebola.
Exactly. But I think I gravitated to AppSec, and I think it was because of the opportunity to sort of continue to build software, but to figure out how to help them build software in a secure way and not get in the way of delivering at pace, right? Trying to figure out how to do that. So it wasn't more about AppSec from that compliance standpoint and pumping out reports and giving them defects, but really how to build that culture and build that relationship, and what's the recipe for building an AppSec program. And so that was the part that sort of really I was inspired by when I got there, and that's why I've kind of gravitated to that space in particular.
Yeah, and as an industry, right, like that space has become more and more interesting. I mean, through my career, as I kind of move through the different aspects of doing things, it becomes more interesting because, like, there's only so many ways to find something like cross-site scripting, right? And at some point, you want to scale that and be able to do it quickly in a developer's pipeline, and you want to manage a program. It's almost like you start to step back and say, all right, the single instances are interesting, especially if there's a cool new technique or way to actually identify them. But as an industry, we're pretty immature about how we handle that once we found it, right? I see that in multiple organizations. I mean, Ken, you and I, when we were at Envisium, how many times did we get a report, or did we do a yearly test for somebody that had the same findings from the year previously, right? It happens all the time.
Quite a bit, yeah. We've talked about this before. It's just this, thing that never changes. To be consistent.
And that goes back to being a management problem, not necessarily hey, we could find the vulnerability problem. It's how do we engage those developers to actually make that change and make that security happen.
And make them care about doing it everywhere, right? Not just, hey, I found this one thing, so go surgically fix that one thing, but rather, I found this one thing. Now think holistically about your code base. That's the thing used to drive me nuts, right? Where you'd find cross-site scripting on one parameter of the page, 19 others, they'd ignore it. They fix the one, right? Come on, you can do better than that, right? So working with the developers to when they finally go that route, then it's an amazing moment in your program. That's where things are starting to stick. That's where cultures are starting to shift and partnerships are being built.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost counter some of this to say that there's also, in our reports included, we're not any different from this. Some of the stuff that we reported on ultimately didn't matter to the both security and developers, right? I mean, that's another thing that doesn't get talked a lot about it, is that consultants, you have your specific checks you look for, but contextually it might not mean a thing. And if you put something that's higher critical, that's likely to get fixed if it's higher critical, but below that, it's all contextual and whatever the teams think it makes sense to prioritize and fix. So.
Yeah. And like along those lines, and as a consultant, I don't want to admit this, but having a hired gun come in to actually fix something without, or like tell you about vulnerabilities without context, you lose quite a bit, right? Because if I only have 2 weeks on an engagement and I don't understand an application as thoroughly as like a product security team does, it's going to be very hard for me to classify that risk properly so that they take it seriously when you hand them that report, right? If you've got a product security team that can ingest that, from the bug bounty researchers and actually give it some context, that's going to do a lot better than just handing off my report to a developer and saying, go fix this stuff, because there's not going to be any of that institutional knowledge there, right?
Yeah, there's like the con side to the consultant could be that, like, that we don't have a window into your business every day. We don't know like your development teams. We don't, whatever. Like we get a target, and we're basically mercenaries that come in for 2 weeks or a week or whatever, and we do what we do, and we hand you off without any sort of like prejudice or understanding of your environment or anything. We hand you off a report. But the pro to that, I'd argue too, is that like definitely there are some things where it's twofold. One is you already know like your team's predisposition to certain things. Like maybe they don't really care about this, so I just stopped reporting it. But maybe a fresh eyes, somebody's new take on the impact of that and risk of that issue, and an outside consultant's report, and hey, now it puts it in front of people. Maybe they look at it a little bit differently. And then the other part of that is just simply like if you're working in the same code base every day, you're not a fresh set of eyes. You bring in somebody from the outside and they can look at this from a completely different sort of risk perspective, or find different bugs than you're used to seeing in your application. So I don't know, long-winded rant, but
no, and what? Same thing on the ProdSec side, right? You get somebody who's attached to a product for so long, not to say they quite go native, but they've seen that code base for so long, built those relationships for so long that, they start to maybe, get a little desensitized to change over time. So swapping those folks out could be a great direction, both for career, but as well as getting that fresh set of eyes. You just have to have the ability to kind of cross-pollinate quickly, right? And that's where, Seth, coming back to having a mature program and that ability for somebody to latch onto a new product, ramp up quickly, and then bring that fresh set of eyes is a good thing for, when you're talking enterprise scale.
Yeah.
That's a good term too, desensitized. I feel like that's accurate.
I thought you were going to say going native. That's what I want to do, is go native.
No more pills.
Sorry. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Cough syrup, Seth.
Let's see. What? Yeah, I need another shot of cough syrup. That sounds about right at this point. Yeah. So what's your ideal then, Sean? Right? Like, what is it that you want to see? Not necessarily like there at Verizon Media, but from the industry. What do you see as kind of lacking when you look across the board and you want help from the industry? What is it that you're trying to find?
One of the biggest things I've come to really appreciate is vendors who care about my success more than the bottom line. And if they care about my success and we build a good partnership, the bottom line will come. But there are so many vendors out there, because there's so much money in security right now, that they can deliver bad service, bad consulting, bad products, and it's okay. And then they slap, it's now the era of DevSecOps. So let's go ahead and say we do that. And by the way, ML, AI, right? And whatever's next. Blockchain, got to throw that in there. And they do that, and they're not focused on, how do I listen to this customer? Because the thing is, there's some generic issues in security. There's some very sort of unique flavors based on all the different cultures. I mean, that's the thing. There's sort of a recipe that generally works, and then you got to tweak it for each culture you hit. And so the consulting companies and the product companies even that can come in and say, I know what this company needs versus what this company needs, and have that combination, man, that would be amazing to me. I don't have as many vendors like that as I would like. And so when I find them, they're, diamonds in the rough, and I want to hang on to them for as long as I can.
So how do you find those vendors, or do you have like a strategy of, okay, I'll start small with these folks and see what they're capable of, or, use word of mouth, or what's your sort of like, that seems like you said, there's a ton of vendors, and it's certainly hard to suss out who is, well, not always so hard, but sometimes can be.
Yeah, some of it's radar based, right? After enough time, like, how do they approach the initial interaction? How do they approach the sales the sales opportunity? Do they lead with, do they listen at all? How much do they speak? How much do they ask about my problems? Are they trying to sell me right out the door, or are they willing to spend some time and invest a little bit longer? All right. There's a security vendor podcast by Mike Johnson, right? There's some interesting stuff happening there. There's, all the different trade shows, but you get, you meet some folks, and you can tell when they're passionate, they really care about the solution. And then, you dive deeper. You say, hey, you have an interesting product or consulting service. I need that. And I'm getting a sense that you're really in it to solve a problem and not necessarily hit your quarterly target, right? And so then you dive in deeper. And I remember, early on, we did this is a while back, date myself, but it was an ounce fortified bake off. And the two vendors showed up, and I'm not even gonna. I think folks who remember that time will probably guess how this went. But one vendor just came in hard, was not listening, was just we're the best. Another vendor came in, listened, was responsive, seemed good to work with, really seemed to care about our program. And there was one tool that worked better. It was a little bit better than the other one for our space and what we're trying to do. But ultimately, we went with the company that we felt like aligned with our guiding principles, right? So product wasn't quite there, but we were willing to invest some time to see if they could get the product there and take that particular product out. So I feel pretty strongly about that. Both people that we hire, both as full-time folks, consultants, companies that we work with, I really, really want them to be engaged in our success and be all in and having a success story. And I think we'll both be successful in the end. I know that was
it's so crazy how relationships. I've given some career advice before, and over, I'll say the same thing. Relationship building is like understanding that aspect and understand, like placing an importance and emphasis on it is like what's going to be best for everyone, right? Because you care, people know that you care. You have a good network of folks. Relationship building is incredibly important, especially in sales. Sales, you really, really need to have some emotional intelligence, some empathy. Really, if you want to be good at it, anyways, build some of those strong relationships with people.
Yeah, and there was a sales guy I once worked with. He didn't last long. This is back when I was in consulting, but he said, hey man, I can sell you security services, software development services, Girl Scout cookies, tires. It doesn't make a difference. I can get you to buy anything, right? And I was like, okay, there's a place for that kind of sales. But then in security, we're just everybody's so unique. Now I'm heavily bent towards the commercial space. So on the government side, I don't know if that might be a little bit different, less relationship and pure, do you meet the check boxes and we'll buy that product? But what I've seen on the commercial side is just, you got to understand us, and we're all a little bit of a different special snowflake.
Yeah, for sure. That's, hey, Steph, Alex, our friend Alex, who runs the consultancy, AppSec consultancy. Yeah. So, he and I were talking about he was asking me like, what kind of background should I be looking for in sales and whatnot. And, I was telling him, I'm like, the funny thing is like, we've not found in the past the best, and you and I we've definitely, this has been the case. None of the best salespeople that we came across actually knew AppSec when we hired them. It was more, they were super good with people and really great listeners. And you didn't get the sense they were just waiting for you to shut up so they could talk and pitch you something. And from that, they could learn. They learned AppSec, and we did a lot to help train. We did a lot to help train them, but that wasn't the major skill that we were looking for. And so, anyways, I explained that to him, and and Sean, I'm sure you've dealt with Amy or Clea. That they're fantastic sales folks, and they didn't start out in AppSec.
Yeah, it's interesting where that actually happens, and I don't know, like, to that point, Sean, as well, like I think about running a large product security team, or even like your own little AppSec team, if you're one, how much of your job is actually sales, right? how much is you going out and selling to development orgs, to developers, even as a consultant, right? If you don't show some empathy and you don't show some understanding, they're never going to actually fix that bug, or they may fix it because it's compliance related, but they're never going to want to deal with you again. Mm-hmm. And so it's not like, I don't think necessarily it's just a vendor problem, but I think it's an industry problem that we deal with, is we just think, hey, it's because it's security, you have to go fix this, right? So you need a DAS solution, and ours is the best, you're going to buy it, right? And it's like, yeah, we need a DAS solution, but you're not, again, this goes back to that holistic program, right? You're not looking at my program holistically. If it doesn't fit all the parameters that I need and help me manage that relationship with other people and help me sell it, it's not going to be a solution that we can use. So even though if you do 1% more than everybody else, that's not necessarily what I'm looking for.
Yeah. When I was in consulting, I sort of burned in that sort of both consultative and sales approach. But one of my favorite times on a site was when I turned down business, when they asked me to do something and I said, it doesn't make sense for you, or that's not in our wheelhouse. So I could do it, but here, I recommend you go to this other firm. And invariably every time, and I didn't do it because of this, but it built trust, right? Because it said, yeah, I'm looking out for you. Don't waste your money on this thing. And then 3 more projects would drop in and we would have business for a couple of years. But, and same thing here, running a ProdSec team in an organization like this, we've got to listen to our developers. We've got to listen to the business and understand what the pressures are, and understand, I think there's the one thing we fail to understand, and I think this is that same, you get desensitized to your requests, is in a large security team, multiple people are asking for things. And guess what? So's internal audit. And guess what? So's legal. And so's privacy. So you're not even the only person who's coming to them beyond just pure pumping out functional code for customers. So you have to recognize that you're one of many pressures. And so how do you get their attention? How do you respect their time? How do you deliver them valuable information and not, like Ken was talking about, these wasteful reports that are just, yeah, here's a lot of garbage, right? Here's 300 informationals. Go have fun.
Oh, come on. That's useful. No. Yeah, I mean, it goes back, like I know I bag on static analysis tools a lot, right? But that's the biggest problem that I have as a developer with anything that comes from the consulting side, is usually it's not actionable. Usually it's either too much information, there's too many false positives, there's no context. And so I'm trying to provide that as a consultant. So, if I'm looking at a Fortify scan or an ounce scan or app scan source, whatever it is now, see, I dated myself there too, Sean. But yeah, there you go. But if I'm looking at one of those, that's the first thing that I'm going to do, is I'm going to distill that down to something that, hey, that's what I care about as a consultant, is like the risk-based approach. But is it helpful for you? Is it helpful for the developers? Can I actually help them out rather than just handing them something else that's going to make their life harder? So,
yeah.
I just want to say for the record that I did prefer ounce.
Nice. How did you know which way we went?
Well, because it's a tool that allows you to customize as much or as little as you want. So yeah, it's the better tool. It won't even work if you don't compile everything correctly. So it has, the libraries included. So it's good. Hard, but it was good.
It was hard. Security is hard,
but it was good. Yes. Yes, it is. Yeah. Well, sweet. Let's see. Okay. So Sean, on another note, right? Like there was something else that we were kind of talking about initially, like before we jumped on the podcast. And in general, it was about finding security talent, right? You're building a large team. I know you've got pools of consultants and employees and management and bug bounty researchers and everything that's there. What are you looking for in someone that's new to the team or in someone that's a seasoned professional? Like, how are you identifying resources?
Oh my gosh, it's so hard right now, right? Everybody's competing for that same kind of talent pool. And I don't mean to be cliche. I'm sure we're all saying that. But my big focus right now is trying to figure out how can I identify potential where it doesn't look like it's a traditional AppSec kind of resource, right? Something where there's somebody who's destructive minded, they get code, they're creative, they're interested, they're fired up about problem solving, and they want to make this pivot from going from being a constructive builder to a destructive mindset and thinking about how to break software, right? I've had some conversation with some folks on the team about whether or not you have to be a software developer to be a successful product security engineer, right? There's some people, just absolutely, right? Some of the best people we've had have come from the software development ranks, and so they must have built software. And then, one of my really strong people, he's written software for himself, but he's incredibly passionate about code, and he doesn't necessarily have that enterprise software development background, but man, he can find all kinds of goodness, right? So, where do you find that talent? Where do you find that talent within your company and outside your company? And then how do you convince people that, yeah, they're not going to hit the ground on day one ready to go, but let's invest 3 months, 6 months, and at the 6-month mark, they might be one of the up and comers of the whole team, right? So that's the tricky thing, is how do you convert potential into something you could codify in an interview process to get through that process. Because I think everybody's still looking for, and in fact, this is an indicator of a real mature program, I think, when you're not looking for the senior or principal AppSec engineer, that you can hire the junior person into your team, recognize the talent, onboard them, and then have the future senior resource. So that's, I'm working through it right now. I think, there's one recipe I have. It has worked every time. It's hard to identify, but it's somebody who's been in a software lead role. It's been a software developer, say 2 to 5 years. They've taken on a leadership role, and it's been a leadership role in developing a security function, right? So they've taken on a security componentry for their product. And they also happen to be looking. I'm giving away my secret now. Everybody's going to grab this. So no, I'm just kidding. But and they're also, pivoting into getting a master's in InfoSec. So they don't have it yet. They haven't done AppSec yet, but they've shown they're interested. They've shown that they like developing security modules, but they also have software development as a broader experience set. Those are great talent to bring in, right? So you can get those through a champion program. You can get those through, searches on resumes. And then where are the other creative places, right? Where's the person who wants to make the pivot? A great guy I used to have on my team, and he went out on his own and is doing really well now. He came from a QA scripting space. So he wasn't a developer by trade, but he used technology to enable his job well, and he was able to make that pivot into security, give him some training, and he was amazing. So, that's, if I could rinse and repeat on that, I feel like I could keep the train going on getting the team, populated, and not have to look for the senior AppSec talent that we know is so hard to find.
Yeah, and that's always the issue. And I'm going to pose the same question to Ken, where he's at GitHub as well, because I look at like hiring, in my past, consultants and others in my career, it was always kind of, all right, like quantifying the passion is always difficult, right? And even looking at someone's like GitHub repo or, CTF results or whatever it is, doesn't necessarily give you a good idea of how passionate that person is and whether or not it's interesting to them that they're going to make that leap.
Yeah.
So I don't have a good answer for that, right? Like I've got ideas of looking for people like, especially the bug bounty researchers nowadays. It would be interesting to actually, hey, guess what? I know you're doing some bug bounty stuff. It looks like you're, in the couple hundreds or whatever, like you're not necessarily in the top 10, but is that a space where like you could pull someone from and turn them into a ProdSec engineer because they are interested, or, so I think the hacking events and stuff like that are another place that are definitely interesting. But it's also,
what we doing. I mean, we like GitHub itself has a really strong intern program. And that's not just for, obviously security, that's for the whole company. So every year there are some interns, and so that will apply, right? Like we'll spread the word around social media, and then those of us that are on the team and the various like Slack and Discord and whatever groups that we're in, we'll say, hey, we're looking for interns. And sometimes you'll get college students that are part of those hacker Slacks or Discord or whatever. So then we get a bunch of applicants, and we have a scaled down version of the true because we use a rubric. I always use a rubric to keep it basically very factual, to make it uniform and to keep sure that to make sure that it's not influenced by whatever, like however you're feeling that day. So it's a scaled down version, and unlike, I would say it's a lot of what we're looking for is not necessarily that you found every single vulnerability, but a lot of the rubrics kind of like, what do you understand? How well do you understand code, et cetera, like that, stuff like that. But I guess what I'm saying is we get folks that apply through the internship, through the interview process, which is like I said, it's pretty uniform. It's pretty well planned out. That's how we kind of find folks that look like they could do the job, and then, honestly, like you're working with those folks for like 6 months or 3 months or whatever. I think it's 3 months for the internship, but then usually they'll come back because we, chosen, thankfully so far we've chosen great people for the internship. So that's one mechanism. And the other thing you talked about was security champions. And from that standpoint, I'll let you know, because we're gonna run a tournament internally, like a CTF
tournament.
Type
so like, yeah, that's what I was just gonna ask. So like a CTF, like, are they fixing code, or is it just like breaking? What is it that you're having them do?
Yeah, so it consists of challenges where you both identify where the vulnerability is, and then, well, it's run by secure code warrior. So it's like that sort of, identify the vulnerabilities, choose the correct fix. It'll be timed, and that's sort of how the tournament goes. So, excuse me, I had chili before this, and it's really hitting me hard.
Got to leave the onions off next time, man.
Yeah, no onions. Just there might have been onions. Yeah.
Yeah, I can smell from here.
The yummy Seth. On the internship program side, I'm curious if do you open it up to developers, and then you have, as they pump through the questions in the rubric, some siphon off as developers and others siphon off as potential ProdSec folks, or is it literally a different internship paths, and somebody applies to be a ProdSec engineer? Because I'm wondering if, as you're going through and doing code tests, you can kind of see somebody who's more destructive minded and peel them off to maybe go down the route of security rather than development.
Well, actually, I learned this not this last week and the weekend before at AppSec Cali. I stayed through the weekend and went to lunch with one of the ProdSec team members. And for us, ProdSec, it just means you're building in security related features. So anyways, we went to lunch, and come to find out, and I didn't realize this, is that his actual internship had started as an AppSec on the AppSec side. Interestingly, most of the people that we interview, they do come from more of like a development standpoint, because unless you are doing bug bounties, you may not have like a ton of professional experience finding vulnerabilities in source code. So anyways, it was what you said there about like showing a passion for sort of building things and thinking about how can we make, how do we not just find the problems, but how do we prevent certain security badness from happening? And so he was moved up when he came back for the full-time position. They were like, do you want to do product security, or do you want to do application security? We got openings in both. And so he chose the obviously product security. So.
Yeah, that's great. And if you can align, this is classic strengths finder stuff, but align people's strengths to their jobs, and happy folks, good production, good stuff all the way around. So that's awesome that you guys do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it's interesting. I haven't seen anybody do it software, like anyone apply for that as, because it's an internship. I haven't seen anybody with like who within the company. I don't know that I don't think it's open. I think it's just open to students, but that is an interesting concept. And Seth, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I did think that's an interesting concept to say, like, within your company, here's an internal position. Because I think the only thing that would be the big blocker is like they're going from salary wise X to, you know, whatever the gap is, right? I'd assume if you're going from like a mid to senior level developer to, you know, let's say a junior or security person, like that salary would be the only thing I could think of that would be a blocker.
Well, salary and the title, right? So they're senior in that role. You try to make the argument that they need to lose senior because they're coming over. They say, look, I got all this sweat equity into the company. I'm not giving up that senior in my title. Say, all right, you're not necessarily a senior, you know, engineer, but all right, let's go for it.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that because in a lot of cases that title is like you said, the title and the salary go kind of like hand in hand in a lot of places. So even if you could get them the same salary, I mean, then there's also just the aspect of the title. But
yeah. And then they join the team with this inflated title where they don't necessarily know AppSec with people, you know, the parity problem, and it gets tricky. It gets tricky fast, Ken.
Yeah, I can imagine. But it would be cool if you could say, look, you know, allow it to open up to various folks, figure out the salary and title thing, and bring some software developers in the company over.
Yeah. So. Well, I mean, that's the traditional problem that we have. I don't know, like my only reticence with internships was, you know, trying to do internships with a small company that really didn't want to invest in interns, right? And not having the resources to be proper mentors for them, or having it suck up time when, you know, that mentor had to do something else. I mean, as a consultant, having to be billable trumps everything, right? Even, you know, if an intern is sitting there and, you know, drawing, you know, they're $10 an hour or whatever it was, right? It was a very difficult prospect. And I almost felt like we did them a disservice in some situations, because it was, hey, here's a task, go do it. And, you know, I'll talk to you again in 2 weeks and we'll see where you get, right? You know, just, there's not a lot of, you know, help there. But
I wonder in those models if there's a way, and it's hard when you're a small company, but could the consultants have been incented with bonuses for taking care of the interns, and, you know, you relax the billability requirement while they have an intern, and then look at that cost basis against what does it take to invest to recruit people into the firm, and then, you know, find that balance, right? I mean, that's, you know, a little bit more work, but I mean, how awesome, right? You could actually, in the time that you spend with the intern, get bonused for it or hit your billability requirement because you were spending time with the intern. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so the only thing that I was saying there, and it's probably not necessarily to you two, because you're all in, you know, big corporate and have lots of money, but, you know, if you're trying
big
to do
corporate,
this,
huh?
Yeah, big corporate, Microsoft over there with your, you know, money signs.
Hey, we operate independently.
Big money signs.
Yeah.
But if you are running a small program, make sure that you are thinking about that up front. If you're going to hire an intern, is making sure that, hey, number one, like, it's scoped properly, but you are investing enough time from a senior resource to help them along. Because I know some of those resources that we had, Ken, and this is from the time that we were together, probably could have turned into be pretty good consultants, but we never gave them the runway to do that, right?
No. Yeah.
And that's on the company, that's on the leadership for not, you know, being able to invest properly. So you guys will do it right, I'm sure. You know, right? There's never any gotchas. So,
well, for us, it did work out well. I believe we've hired every intern that we've had.
Interesting.
Wow. That's a great conversion rate.
Yeah. I mean, I could be wrong, but and the cool thing too, though, I'll say, is that like when I was talking to Matt, he had other offers from other really awesome companies, but he liked the culture there. So not to tout us too much, but we got that going for us. So.
I don't know, Sean, is that something that you've looked into before, is actually running some sort of an internship?
Oh yeah, we have there's multiple internship programs here, and actually within the Paranoids, we have one team in particular that's got just sort of a great pipeline and an approach to how they bring in interns, get them ramped up, and then the conversion rate. I don't know that one off the top of my head, but I think it's pretty solid. So there's just some great learning, and and then how do you keep that moving and those folks growing? And it almost gets into that triangular consulting model where you got the junior folks, and then so many go to intermediate, so many go to senior, and that kind of thing, and then you got to keep pumping the junior people through. But there's a lot of support for that. I've literally been so busy that I haven't been able to kind of jack into the internship program, which is a horrible excuse. I mean, there's just no excuse. In fact, I said I would not use the word busy in 2019. So you guys now, what's it, February, whatever? You just got it.
Oh, 0 days since you mentioned busy.
Yeah, this is an explicit episode, Sean. Gosh, what are we doing here?
Busy cyber. That's what we're doing.
Busy cyber with, cold medicine, and it's out of control. It's out of control.
Out of control, that's for sure, right? Next thing I know, you're going to be dancing on your desk there.
I did that before. I'm exhausted.
You're exhausted. Okay.
From a selfish perspective, it feels super good to help somebody else get their career going, and from a warm fuzzy for yourself, not for just from that sort of selfish viewpoint. It's really nice, but from the bigger, grander, the right way to look at it, you're helping somebody with their career. So
absolutely. One of a buddy of mine from my old job we always just talk about sort of mentoring and always having a mentor and always being a mentor. And we talked about giving back, and he said, always freely give back which was given to you already, right? So you think about those who have passed on to you. It's your obligation to sort of do the pay it forward concept and then mentor other folks. So yeah, I'm wholeheartedly buy into that, Ken. That's good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we should pimp Hoodlet. Isn't Keith the one that runs that InfoSec Mentors project?
Yeah, InfoSecMentors.org, I think. .net.
I mean, that's a pretty good place to go. And I mean, honestly, that's not something that I've ever really been involved with. I've had a couple people through my career that have been mentors, but it's never been kind of that so formalized. But definitely it's like I can see it as being useful. I don't know, my big thing, right? Talking to people that are in college asking about, they're going into computer science. And I'm always like, man, you should come into the AppSec space because this is where it's at. And they're like, yeah, but I want to go develop video games. And I'm like, you really don't, guys. You really don't.
You don't. Have you read anything about developing video games and what that's like? That is the worst.
I know. I know. And they're like, well, I could do my own little iOS game and sell it on the App Store. And I'm like, no, you really can't, right? How many games are out there? That's the struggle that I've had just talking to people that are in school currently is man, come hack stuff, right? And that seems to be where I've actually found the most success is when I can talk them into coming to the local B-Sides event, that I can talk them into coming to some meetups, and all of a sudden they're picking locks and they're doing other stuff. And I'm like, man, let's translate what you're doing at school to something that's going to give you a great career rather than something that's you're going to hate your life in 5 years because you can't find a job because you're just one of another, 100 QA testers for EA or whatever it is. So anyway.
Ken Toller made a good point, which is if you mention to us that you got your AppSec, you get your AppSec news from AppSec, you're hired.
Automatically. All right, so we'll pimp it. So Ken Toller will hire you. We can send him to you too, Sean, if you want him to go that direction too.
It's a done deal, especially episode 45.
Right, episode 45. Listen to this. Get a job. Verizon Media. There you go. We've got it recorded here. 45. No, it's awesome. I don't know. Not many people that I talk to, right, necessarily know what we do. When I'm not talking community wise, but I'm talking just neighborhood, friends and family. There's always some kid that's like, hey, I'm going into computer science, and like that's been the traditional problem that I've had, is just, hey, you need to be showing some interest in this portion. It's going to be better than doing, something crappy like Rails development, right? Right.
Yeah. What kind of loser does that?
Sure. Sorry, I had to get my dig in for the episode.
I'm sorry we're not running on Java 2E or whatever you're used to developing on, or COBOL or whatever shit you wrote code in. So,
hey, my COBOL is still running.
You got to
is your hieroglyphic language? Was it just etched into tablets and
stuff? Yeah. Keep trying. You'll get there.
Eventually, I'll figure out how to make old jokes about you. One thing I want to get to though, from one thing I definitely wanted to ask you, Sean, since we're over an hour now, before we got off, I wanted to ask you about your sort of resources, or what like influences your leadership philosophy, or any tips you can give, anything that from around leadership that sort of helps kind of show what type of style you have or influenced it.
Yeah, there's something happened like really early in my career, and it sort of set the stage for how I wanted to behave professionally and how I wanted to lead. And I was at a customer site and I completely screwed up. These are the days when you can like walk right into the server room. It was somebody's office, and just open the door, go in, right? And so I was in there. I thought I was in a QA environment, and ended up propagating some bad changes to prod across the country. Really serious screw up. And I was able to back it out after a whole day and some drama. And the next day, my boss came on site, and we were meeting with the CIO, and he's like, "Hey, I got you covered." I said, "Awesome, this is my boss." And we go into the meeting, and I just can't wait to hear what he's going to say. And when it comes to this particular topic, my boss says, "Yep, we screwed up. It won't happen again. We're sorry." I said, what was that? And afterwards he said, no, you got to be honest. You got to own it. That's it. I don't, and then we went up to the CIO's office, and this guy was former military. And, it was me and my boss. I was pretty sure I was getting fired, by the way. And then the CIO.
Oh man, that's terrible.
Oh, it was awful. The CIO drops F-bomb after F-bomb. Just, you completely F'd up, you F'd up, and say, okay, get out. So I get out, and then he just ends up talking to my boss and says, yeah, I just wanted to scare the guy. He can come back tomorrow and just make sure he's not going to do it again, and all that kind of stuff. So, it was just sort of this honesty and ownership, and walking through that and seeing my boss just kind of, whether the account was on the line or not, he was just going to say, look, we made a mistake, and that's it. No excuses, no anything. Anyway, so, I think just sort of being genuine, true to who you are. I really care about the people who work for me. So my leadership style was inclusive, trying to figure out how to drive their careers, drive their, professional interests, and really build a team that you care about. And buy into what we're doing and have a piece of what we're doing. So it's kind of that servant leadership philosophy. So that's a direction that I really try to go. And I think if you're true to yourself and you're really interested in people, good stuff will follow, right? And there's somebody I follow, Bruce Kazanoff. He's a great guy. He talks about sort of leadership and management by kindness, right? And that can be taken advantage of, and there's other things. But if you think about how can I help? What can I do for you, right? And in fact, when people Slack me from Verizon Media, one of my first things is say, "Hey, Sean," I say, "Hey, how can I help you today?" Right? And it's just "Hey, how can I serve? What can I do? What can my team do? We want to help enable you." So that's sort of the philosophy that I have, and I think the team appreciates it. They can let me know later if they're buying what I'm selling here.
Yeah, no. I mean, actually, one of my I guess there's a new one that's out, and I haven't read it. I think it's called The Dichotomy of Leadership. I haven't read that one, but Extreme Ownership. Love that book. Great management leadership book. I was in the military, and that was sort of leadership. So in terms of what you said, which was essentially, outwardly facing to another department, "Hey, we're sorry, we'll make this right." And then inwardly, privately being critical of whatever happened and saying, like, don't let it happen again. That's very much part of that leadership training. And then, the other part being like actually not just saying, okay, we're gonna make it better. We won't do that again, et cetera. Like actually believing and making that a forefront sort of like of importance, truly owning that like we will find a way to not let that happen again. And it was my fault. And even if it was, Sean who did XYZ, he's underneath my leadership. So that's on me. Maybe I didn't train him well enough. Maybe the policies weren't clear enough. Maybe there weren't whatever safeguards in place. Anyways, just agreeing with you. And I think Extreme Ownership talks a lot about that stuff, and everybody who's doing leadership stuff should definitely read it.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. And another one that I keep coming back to, and it's a classic, is the 5 dysfunctions of a team, right? And so, reversing that and having things like, accountability, trust, healthy conflict, right? The ability to sit in a team meeting and disagree wholeheartedly about an approach, but leave and understand that you're doing it to make everyone better, right? Rather than, having it be sort of acerbic and just for the joy of fighting, right? It's not about that. It's about challenging each other and making each other better. Those are the kinds of things I love that philosophy. And then the same thing, Strengths Finder, that philosophy of focusing on what you're good at and investing in that, rather than me trying to be Steph Curry. It ain't gonna happen, right? I could practice 10,000 hours. It's just not gonna happen. Let me focus on my wheelhouse and build that up and complement a team with folks with different strengths.
I have to read that book now. I did post a link. Hopefully it's the right book. The 5
dysfunctions.
Yep.
Happy to do it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. Like, I'll be honest. Like, I haven't read a lot of management books. Right? This just hasn't been my like. I'm a sci-fi geek, right? That's what I read on a plane. Sorry. But along those lines, like the stuff that you're saying makes a lot of sense to me. I think about kind of the consulting mindset that I got into early in my career, where it's, you get asked a question, it's like, hey, how can I help, right? And then taking ownership of what you're good at and saying, hey, I can help you in this way, but if you want that expertise, I don't know who can, but I can go figure out what how we can help you somewhere else, and at least owning up to what it is that you do as opposed to what other people do seems to be pretty effective. So
I know you read Rework, Seth, so you can't say you don't read.
I don't read a lot of management books. It's just, yeah, it is
just
what it
several.
is. Just several, just a couple here and there. I am also on, cold medicine. So there you go. Right.
No, but I like Rework too for different reasons. It's kind of very different from what we're talking about, I think, but also like that. So cool. I guess I'll link to that too while y'all are chatting.
Yeah, Sean. So I don't know. I appreciate people that do that. Like, so, even though I don't, like, I appreciate that there is a lot of analysis and a lot of thought that goes into that approach. And I think I've picked up some of that from dealing with people like yourself, as far as, hey, this is the approach that works best when, managing people, dealing with people, helping an organization, however that may be. So.
Well, and AppSec and security as a whole is about sort of transformation and change management. I mean, there's a big piece. A lot of security leaders start out as engineers and they're left brain focused, and they believe it's a technical solution, and it's a business solution, it's a people solution. I think Bob Lord said if it was a technology solution, we would have solved it many times over by now, right? So it's not a technology thing. So you got to have, for the folks in security leadership positions, they need to invest in understanding, if they're in those positions, understanding people, understanding leadership, understanding how we deal with change, understand how we transform organizations so that they embrace security rather than run from security, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, good. Yeah, we've been going for over an hour. Like Ken said, it always seems to fly right along, right?
This is great.
Yeah, it's been really interesting though. Any place that you're going in the near future that people could meet with you, or if they wanted to reach out, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me. I'm all over Twitter.
Obviously.
SK00. I mean, just I'm in there now. I'm getting more into the Twitter sphere.
Yeah, for those who don't get that, just today I figured out that Sean has. I've been following you, and because you tweet so infrequently, I didn't even realize you were on Twitter. So
we'll
that's
change
the
that in
funny part.
2019. We'll change that in 2019. But I will be. I will most likely be at B-Side San Francisco, and the Paranoids are going to have a big presence there. So looking forward to that live hacking event and Paranoids booth, all that kind of good stuff. And then we're doing. I'm part of the OWASP Nova chapter, and we're going to be leading the charge for getting OWASP AppSec USA here in DC around the September-October timeframe. So I'll be heavily involved with that and really readily accessible in the area that week. So that'll be awesome. In between, I have no idea right now, but often heading out to Sunnyvale to spend some time with the team out there. So anybody's in Silicon Valley and wants to hook up, flying into San Fran, drive the 45 down to Sunnyvale, got my routine. So happy to meet up along the way and hit some Phil's coffee. That's my crutch.
Sweet, the Phils. Oh, I miss the Phils. That's the best. That's some good stuff right there, man. Now I'm craving that. To come down and meet you.
Pour some cough syrup in there. It's really good.
Really good. Wait. I'm hopefully I'll be healthy by the time B-Sides SF rolls around.
Oh man, I hope so.
It's a little ways away. So cool. Well, Sean, thanks again for joining today. It's been really interesting to talk about multiple different things. Hope it continues to go well. Let us know if there's anything that we can promote from our realm about Verizon Media or jobs or anything like that. I know there's a lot of people that are out there, and we'll push them your way if you guys got openings.
Yeah, we actually have a lot of openings. So definitely, if you just search for Paranoids and jobs and Workday, you'll be able to find all of our openings. We got a lot of them, and we're definitely hiring across the board. So if you're listening to this and interested, come on down, or reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I can share any more about the jobs that we have open.
Yeah, I was gonna say I put your information on your Twitter information, your LinkedIn, both in the YouTube live chat, which is available when you replay this video on a desktop, and then also inside of our Slack channel, so that if anybody wanted to get in touch with you, whether it be regarding jobs, whether it be regarding, because you've talked a little bit about the bug bounty live hacking events, but if they have questions about running a bug bounty or those live events, whatever running security at scale, whatever they want to contact you at, those links are in there.
Absolutely, that's great. Totally happy to do that. Would love to make some new connections. And thank you guys for the Absolute AppSec podcast. Or live cast. These are great. They're a lot of fun, and I'm kind of jamming my way through them all. So I'm honored to be here with you guys. Had a great time jawing it up, and hope to be on again sometime.
Yeah, we'll have you on.
Oh, yeah.
We try not to make it onerous, but yeah, it'll be fun. We can reconnect in a few months and see how things are going. So
sounds good.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate it. We're just now starting to get back to the first 2018, beginning of 2018 folks now, so that we can sort of have people catch up with people that were on the show. But yeah, thank you for coming on. Seriously.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. All right, Ken, I don't think there's anything else. I will be at B-Side Salt Lake City. That's in a couple of weeks, like February 21st, 22nd. If anybody wants to hook up there, I'm not actually speaking, but I'll be around. And other than that, I don't think there's a lot that's on our calendar. B-Sides SF is coming up. Ken, are you going to be anywhere?
Locomogasec, maybe we'll see how the Tel Aviv thing goes. Yeah, but for right now, probably just Locomogasec, which I need to get my tickets. I was going to mention the Tribe of Hackers book, that it's out, and that the proceeds go to charities. They've on their Twitter account, you can see the list of charities that they're donating to. But this is a book full of, it's basically cybersecurity advice from a bunch of people in the security community. It's worth checking out. So
Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining. Sean, thanks again. Thanks,
you're welcome. Thank you. Have a good night.
Take care. All right.